Slide 1. Welcome to Networking and Health Information Exchange, Basic Health Data Standards. This is Lecture B. This component, Networking and Health Information Exchange, addresses what is required to accomplish networking across and among disparate organizations who have heterogeneous systems. As one might imagine, this topic covers a lot of territory fraught with new topics and a lot of acronyms. Our apologies, but that's what it is. We suggest you keep your glossary beside you as you study this material. Unit 4 covers basic health data standards and consists of 6 lectures. Over these 6 lectures, we will identify the set of standards necessary to establish semantic interoperability. In Lecture B, we begin a discussion of the more popular set of terminologies in use today. Slide 2. The objectives for this unit, Basic Health Data Standards, are to understand why it is necessary to use a common set of data elements with common names to be able to exchange and understand data from other places. Understand what is meant by semantic interoperability. Understand many of the sets of controlled vocabularies in use today, how they are used and who requires their use. Slide 3. Additional objectives for this unit, Basic Health Data Standards, are to understand the use, purpose, and interrelation among sets of controlled vocabularies in use today. Identify the more common controlled vocabularies in use today: ICD, CPT, DRG, NDC, RX norm, and LOINC. Identify the more common controlled vocabularies in use today: SNOMED, medicine, MEDRA, nursing terminologies, MESH, and UMLS. Understand data elements, attributes of data elements. Slide 4. Additional objectives for this unit, Basic Health Data Standards, are to understand contribution of master metadictionary of data elements to semantic interoperability. Explain how data structures can be built from basic data components. Explain how templates and archetypes facilitate networking and information interchange. And discuss clinical data architecture, CDA, continuity of care document, CCD, and continuity of care record, CCR, standards. Slide 5. Some of the terminologies address only some small component of the total requirements. Most controlled vocabularies were originally designed for a specific purpose, but over time expanded the scope. None were designed as a clinical communication language. The terminologies covered in this lecture include ICD-9 and ICD-10, International Classification of Disease, created by the World Health Organization. Common procedural terminology, owned by the American Medical Association. Diagnostic-related group, used by CMS. NDC, National Drug Codes, used by the FDA. RX norm, created jointly by NLM and others. Logical observations, identifiers, observations, and codes, LOINC, created by a consortium led by Dr. Clem MacDonald, then of the Regenstrief Institute, now the head of Lister Hill Center at the NLM.
ICD is sponsored by the World Health Organization, WHO. ICD is the most commonly used controlled terminology worldwide, and it is used mostly for diagnoses. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, CMS, requires its use for claims. The CM is for clinical modification and is defined by the U.S. to extend the code set for billable items. This slide shows the progression from ICD-9 to ICD-10 and beyond. ICD-10, ICD-10-CM, and ICD-10-PCS. PCS is a procedural coding system. ICD-10 is used by most of the world. The U.S. switched from ICD-9 to ICD-10 in 2015. ICD-11. Dr. Chris Shute of Mayo Clinic is chief editor of ICD-11. It includes SNOMED and DRG. The target date for completion is 2018. ICD is the most commonly used control terminology worldwide. and it is used mostly for diagnoses. CMS requires its use on billing claims. The CM is for clinical modification and is defined by the U.S. to extend the code set for billable items.
Slide 7. Most controlled vocabularies are more than a list of words. The next two slides illustrate approaches to a terminology model. Vocabulary sets use different models, which sometimes make it difficult to map from one vocabulary set to another. Many coding systems are based on a strict hierarchy in which a term can only be linked to a higher order term. In other words, a child can have only one parent. In this example, cholera is an infectious disease, which is a disease. Tuberculosis is a form of lung disease, which in turn is a disease. The advantage of a strict hierarchy is that the diagnostic process can move from a higher level, less precise term to a more precise term. Queries can be directed at any level, so a query for infectious disease would yield both cholera and meningitis. Slide 8. In a polyhierarchy, a term can have more than one parent. In this case, tuberculosis is noted both as a lung disease and an infectious disease. Both pathways lead to the top level of disease. In this structure, if we queried for infectious disease, we would get tuberculosis. If we queried for lung disease, we would also get tuberculosis.
This slide shows some of the ICD-10 codes that can be used to represent tuberculosis biased with adjectives that relate to other things beyond the actual disease. Many of these codes are really billing codes, not medical. Some of these codes are compound and mix a physiological condition with a process or procedure. These codes work for reimbursement, but many are not good for clinical coding. Some of the problems that ICD-9 had, including increasing the granularity needed for clinical decision support, were partially resolved in ICD-10.
Slide 10. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM-IV codes, are similar in structure to ICD. It was created by the psychiatric community because ICD did not provide the level of specificity and completeness that the psychiatric community felt it needed. It is a reasonably stable vocabulary. It is more a list of words than it is knowledge-based. It was not created for use in database infrastructures and does not have the richness of hierarchical linkages. The DSM-IV is published by the American Psychiatric Association and is not free for use. Slide 11. Current Procedural Terminology, CPT, was developed by the American Medical Association. CPT codes are required by CMS. The licensing fee can range from hundreds of dollars to thousands of dollars, depending on the size of the institution. CPT codes are redundant with other coding systems, but are an important source of revenue to the AMA and continue to be required. CPT codes are used to define, for purposes of billing, the nature of the visit, initial, routine, complicated, and the extent of activity by the provider. Slide 12. Here are some examples of CPT codes. 76090, unilateral mammography. 76091, bilateral mammography. 76092, screening mammography, bilateral, 2-view film study of each breast. 76096, mammographic guidance for needle placement, breast, e.g., for wire localization or for injection, each lesion, radiological supervision and interpretation. 76645, ultrasound, breasts, unilateral or bilateral, B-scan and or real-time with image documentation. Note how specific some of the codes are. These codes have much significance related to billing. The reimbursement may differ greatly depending on the code used. A method to determine how providers should be paid related to effort is based on the CPT codes. That process, called the Relative Value Scale, RVS, assigns a relative value which is adjusted by geographic region. The scale is based on physician work, practice expense, and malpractice expense. It does not include outcome, quality of service, severity, or demand. hence a criticism. Slide 13. Diagnosis-related groups, DRG codes, are used to group hospital cases into approximately 500 diagnosis-related groups. Each group includes diagnoses, procedures, and other factors: age, severity, complications, comorbidities. These codes are grouped based on the expectation that a group of items would use similar hospital resources. DRGs have been adopted by most payers and have been used in other countries. Slide 14. The slide shows examples of DRG coding. The patterns for reimbursement can be clearly seen. Coding skill and interpretation of DRG codes can also play a big factor in reimbursement. Again, this set does not work for clinical documentation. It is for billing only. These codes show the grouping of diagnoses, procedures, and other factors noted in the previous slide. Slide 15. NDC codes are used by the FDA. It is a list of all drugs manufactured for commercial distribution. An NDC code is a 10-digit, 3-segment number, which serves as a product identifier for human drugs and is also for reimbursement. It identifies the labeler, product, and trade package size. Codes may be reused and are limited in representation of drugs. The code for aspirin with codeine is 54868-0385. Note the listing includes dosage form, routes of administration, active ingredients, strength, and units. NDC codes are used for reimbursement. Slide 16. RxNorm provides normalized names for clinical drugs and links its names to many of the drug vocabularies commonly used in pharmacy management and drug interaction software, including those of First Databank, Micromedex, Medispan, Gold Standard Alchemy, and Multum. By providing links between these vocabularies, RxNorm can mediate messages between systems not using the same software and vocabulary. RxNorm now includes the National Drug File Reference Terminology, NDFRT, from the Veterans Health Administration. NDFRT is a terminology used to code clinical drug properties, including mechanism of action, physiologic effect, and therapeutic category. RxNorm is produced by the NLM and is included in the Unified Medical Language System. Slide 17. This slide illustrates the components and relationships that make up RxNorm. It is likely that RxNorm will become the preferred coding scheme for drugs in the U.S. It includes ingredients, composition, form, dosages, packaging, generic name, and brand name. For example, C0350474 is diazepam 5 mg oral capsule, has ingredient C0699187, Valium, and consists of C0992254, diazepam 5 mg. It has dose form C0991533, oral capsule. It is a C1256450 Valium oral capsule that has the trade name of C1249939, diazepam oral capsule. Slide 18. The Department of Veterans Affairs Veterans Health Administration began the creation of an enterprise reference terminology that has evolved into a most valuable national resource. This resource, named the VA National Drug File Reference Terminology, is a reference terminology for medications and uses a formal description logic ontological representation of medications. The NDFRT is a concept model that is organized into hierarchies of concepts that provides useful groupings of drugs into various attributes. Generic ingredients or combinations of ingredients are described in terms of active ingredients, mechanisms of action, physiologic effects, and therapeutics, indications and contraindications. Orderable drug products, clinical drug, are built on the generic descriptions detailed in the NDF. The NDFRT works with the structured product labeling standard to provide for unambiguous management of a patient's medication profile. Slide 19. Structured product labeling, SPL, is the data contained on the small print sheets in the packing of a medication. SPL defines the content of prescription drug labeling in XML format. SPL has this data as structured data that can be read and used by a computer. This feature is important for e-prescribing systems and for clinical decision support systems. Slide 20. DailyMed provides high-quality information about marketed drugs. This information includes FDA labels, package inserts. This website provides health information providers and the public with a standard, comprehensive, up-to-date lookup and download resource of medication content and labeling as found in medication package inserts. The DailyMed formats the data of SPL into a human-readable and understandable form. This database is the source of the information sheet typically given to patients. Slide 21. Low Inc is used in the U.S. primarily for the name of laboratory tests. Its use in the U.S. is quite widespread. It is available without charge. Clinical Low Inc is less frequently used. The laboratory portion of Low Inc contains standard test names and codes. Includes chemistry, hematology, serology, microbiology, including parasitology and virology, toxicology, drugs and cell counts for blood smears and cerebrospinal fluids, and antibiotic susceptibilities. The clinical portion of Low Inc includes vital signs, hemodynamics, intake-output, ECG, obstetric ultrasound, cardioecho, urologic imaging, pulmonary ventilator management, survey instruments, and other. Slide 22. LOINC codes are used by many of the commercial clinical laboratories. New codes can be added quickly to the set with simple processes. LOINC has been defined by experts working in the field. Its roots came from major health centers and the commercial laboratories. LOINC codes are unique and have no meaning. The format is NNNNN-N, where the last N is a mod 10 check digit. A typical code, 4764-5. Each LOINC record corresponds to a single test or panel and includes long names, short names, and synonyms. Slide 23. These axes were defined by asking the question, what are the minimum characteristics we need to know to uniquely identify lab tests? The definition axes are 1. Component. What is measured, evaluated, or observed? Examples: potassium, hemoglobin, hepatitis C antigen. 2. Property measured. Characteristics of what is measured. Examples: length, mass, volume, timestamp, enzyme activity. 3. Timing. Interval of time over which the observation or measurement was made. Examples: point in time, PT. Observation integrated over an extended duration of time, 24-hour urine. 4. Type of sample. Context or specimen type on which observation is made. Examples: urine, blood, serum. 5. Type of scale. Quantitative, true measurement. Ordinal, ranked set of options. Nominal, for example, E. coli. Narrative, dictation from X-ray. And 6. Method. Procedure used to make measurement or observation. Examples: cuff method for blood pressure and automated BP measurement. Slide 24. For the first example, sodium SCNC PT SER /PLAS QN, component is sodium, property measured is substance concentration, timing is point in time, specimen is serum plasma, and measurement is quantity. For the second example, sodium SRAT 24H UR QN, the component is sodium, property measured is substance rate, timing is 24-hour, specimen is urine, and measurement is quantity. For the third sample, glucose 3H post 100G glucose PO SCNC, PT, SER/PLAS, QN. Component is glucose, done as a 3-hour post 100-gram glucose load by mouth. Property measured is substance concentration, timing is point in time, specimen is serum plasma, and measurement is quantity. Slide 25. LOINC continues to evolve with new codes. New direction includes terminology for genomics. LOINC has a defined process for submitting new terms. The process can be done by anyone. The submitted term goes through a validation procedure. LOINC is the fastest controlled vocabulary to adopt new codes. LOINC includes clinical codes that overlap with SNOMED. LOINC also has codes for HL7 documents and for standardized questions that can be included on standard questionnaires. Slide 26. A free tool called RELMA is available for searching and working with LOINC codes. A web-based version of that tool is now available. In addition to funding by the Regenstrief Foundation, this work has been funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and the National Library of Medicine. As noted, LOINC is available at no charge. Slide 27. There is a close relationship between LOINC and HL7 messages. LOINC codes can be interoperably used to identify the laboratory test. OBX is the HL7 message segment for observation and result. The data element is identified by a triplet: the LOINC code, the test name, and an LN to indicate that the code comes from LOINC. The names, text, are self-defining. Slide 28. This concludes Lecture B of Basic Health Data Standards. You will hear much conversation about free text or narrative and structured data. Free text means that the source enters or writes the documentation in free form without control or structure. That narrative is subject to all of the problems we have discussed. It is difficult to use that text to derive clinical guidelines, decision support systems, queries, and analyses. Terminology and data elements are one of the most important enablers to achieve semantic interoperability. The next lecture will continue to discuss other commonly controlled terminology sets. In Lecture B, you have learned some of the more common controlled vocabularies. In many cases, a particular terminology is used for a specific purpose. In most cases, the doctor enters a textual term and a coder does the actual coding. You will be exposed to many of these vocabulary sets.